not that it's not that these things aren't inevitable. There's no getting around this repeated conversation that will always come up that you are essentially being the bad liberal, and therefore you have to change. And this is where we are.
It is
No, I
also the
understand
problem.
all that. There is no conversation, to use that word, that I can think of in politics I would rather be having. In terms of liberalism, yeah, there will always be agitators trying to make it more like socialism, more like, as was mentioned, French liberalism, or more like progressivism.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I would rather that conversation, that particular flavor of decay and rebirth, an inevitable pattern which is always going to happen with human societies. I would rather that conversation than a conversation like, yeah, but which social group should we utterly destroy next? And then it happens.
Or
on a large scale, millions.
Or papers, please.
Yeah. Which social group should be totally restricted next?
Yeah. Yeah. Like who, or more accurately, which cultural, ethnic, social, or religious group can we blame our current patch of problems that is literally the fault of the fact that we've put ourselves, our incompetent friends, and our incompetent family members into positions of power in order to secure our power?
Yeah.
What group are we going to blame this year? Because that is what you get. That is what you always have gotten. That is what you always will get. Because with a dictatorship, with a monarchy, with these forms of authoritarianism, you might get a generation of prosperity. You genuinely might. You might get a lifetime. 20, 30 years. It might be good. But after that, the people who have sucked up to that great leader, the people who have formed a shield, a societal cultural milieu around that leader, when that leader dies, they will take over. And that's when the bad time starts.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time. Every time. So.
And you are it is very easy to criticize the thing that's currently in place, but you've got to think about, okay, but what's the alternative? Winston Churchill, I constantly come back to this, democracy is the worst system, but better than all the others that have ever been tried, or something like that. It's he was talking about democracy, but you can take it to refer to classical liberalism.
It's a bad system, but it's better than all the others so far.
Yeah, exactly.
I completely don't disagree with that. It's not a great system, but it's a hell of a lot better than having one person or a small group of people having absolute power.
Yeah. Honestly,
you do not want that.
Similarly to capitalism itself, I think the problems that you could argue are with liberalism are in fact reflections of of the universe's struggle, of the struggle of being part of a species, merely reflected through what is in fact the best available system, liberalism. And all of the systems are attempting to reflect that in a way that's useful. They're the tools that we use to deal with that complexity. But liberalism is just slightly better at doing it. Just a little bit better, at least just a little bit better than any other system that we've had in mind. And when we talk about Sargon, you may think it's unfair if I come back with a response that argues, yeah, but fascism is worse than liberalism, or communism is worse. Okay, well then give me what political system you think is best that does not depend upon liberal principles. Because don't think there really is one. Any form of conservatism, any form of any system that is not socialism or some sort of fascism is almost always going to depend on at least a good chunk of liberal principles. Yeah, Pigsty, even with monarchy, if he's going to say feudal monarchy, well, okay, that is different. Granted, you could argue that's a fourth option, but that is essentially the same sort of oligarchy that you would end up with a sort of slightly lighter form of fascism or national socialism, so it's pretty comparable. But if he's talking about non-feudalist monarchy, he's going to have to fill that hole with something still. You can't just say, well, we have a single leader and it's hereditary, but then, okay, but what do you do beyond that? Do you still have a parliament? A lot of monarchy systems have a parliament. Do you still have any sort of people to represent it, or do you have a court at that point? It's starting to sound feudal. Which one is it?
Mm-hmm. Sounding pretty oligarchical there, my dude.
The problem with what we have today is the oligarchy. Now, granted, it's because it's a silent and too powerful oligarchy, but still, do you really want to go from a liberal system, which is currently subverted by an oligarchy, to an explicit oligarchy? I suppose you might argue that at least it would be more visible. But how about if we just remove the current oligarchy? It sounds a lot easier, to be honest.